Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, Yoga Story Express. And I'm here today with Joel Manning. And Joel is an HR consultant, wellness counseling, mindful coach, tarot readings, and more. I think I got that whole list, but
Oh, wow. When you put it that way, I do too much.
no, but you know what? Like Joel and I were doing a little pre-show prep, and we are in the same boat, my friends. Did I leave anything out? Anything? I always like to also ask the guests, hey, expand upon that because
Yeah.
we tend to try to summarize ourselves in these little quick sound bites of what we do. But
Mm.
what else would you like to add to that list? Or is there any depth that you'd like to go into there?
Well, maybe just a little bit of depth about each of those things. So I do have a day job as an HR administrator, but in my quote unquote downtime, I also have a business called As Is Consulting where I offer, it's a little bit of a weird combo, but I promise it makes sense. I offer HR consulting for businesses as well as like employee wellness and diversity, equity, inclusion consulting, things like that to really help companies that want to have like a people first workplace and don't know how to get there. And then I also offer wellness consulting for individuals, where I do a lot of work around mindfulness, positive psychology, habit formation, things like that. And so I know that sounds like two different worlds, but you'd be surprised how well they work together in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So yeah.
Yeah, I relate because I'm also a health coach teaching people like that habit stacking and time management
Mm,
and definitely and which is going to lead us into our topic, but that definitely weaves very well into a healthy lifestyle.
yeah.
Keep going.
Um, Yeah, so I mean, that is kind of the bulk of what I do in my business as far as just kind of who I am as a person in my free time. I really love the outdoors, always trying to hike or get in the water. I love reading. I'm a little bit nerdy. I love some anime, some sci-fi, things like that. But probably the biggest influence in my life right now has been therapy, just to be honest. I've been in therapy for about 6 years now. And when I say that that has changed my life, that is the understatement of the century. So um, I know it's kind of weird to have therapy as like an integral part of your personality, but for me, it just kind of is, like all the things that I had to learn and figure out just to be functional have turned into this really fantastic kind of just catalog of insight in my brain. And that's
Yeah.
really what led me into the wellness coaching is because I was just talking about my journey very openly in my social circle. Because it's always been important to me to make sure that I'm presenting myself as authentically as possible so that if someone is looking for permission to be themselves, they can get that from seeing me. You know what I mean? And so that's just kind of how I've been living my life. And enough people saw the changes in me in the way that I talked about my journey and the way that I just showed up in the world, that they started reaching out to say, hey, you like got better. How did you do that? Because I struggle with a lot of the same things you do, and I've been stuck here for so long. And so at first, I had that crazy imposter syndrome that was like, who am I to tell anybody like what to do with their lives or how to get better or how to talk to themselves? Like, I am the worst at all of those things. Why would I try to help someone else? But like, I just had to kind of come to terms with the reality that like I was getting better, that these things are working and they worked for me. Not to say that that is going to work for everybody and that, my truth is everyone's, but enough people were coming to me to say, "Hey, I see this growth in you." And so then I had to acknowledge the growth in me, and just kind of accept that like I have something to offer people. And at a certain point, the level of like messages and emails and everything got really overwhelming. And I remember jokingly saying to myself, I got to start charging for this. And then I stopped and I was like, oh. I need to start charging for this. Like,
But
so
that's a very similar path too for myself because of the position that I'm in. Oh, and first of all, I went through a pretty public divorce, being who I am and who he was, and getting divorced after 18 years. I started getting women coming to me then. How did you do that?
mm,
How did you come out of like how did you basically like pull yourself up in this emotional situation that people go through and say, I'm going to fight for what is mine? And how did you do it on your own? Like, how
mm.
did you come? And I'm like, well, I didn't, first of all. Like, I
Yeah.
women who came alongside me and said, I can't do this for you, but I can hold your hand. So the same thing, I can't tell you what to do, but I can hold your hand and I can inform you of what your rights are. And you can go then and be informed and move forward from it. But then it progressed into people, see that I manage two businesses and have two kids that I co-parent with my ex-spouse and train for Ironmans and eat healthy. And they're like, how can I bring some of that into my life? And I start telling them these things. And then I'm like, oh, I should be charging for this
Yep, yep.
because this has been a decade, of experience of,
Mhm.
figuring things out, of trying to balance things. And that some things have worked and some things have not. There are things, and you and I were talking in the pre-show prep, but we'll get to that later, of some things that
Yeah.
I need to be pulling into my life that I haven't been pulling into my life.
Mm.
Um, so just a little background on how I know Joel. Joel and I met through a mutual friend, Kim. Shout out, Kim. Hi.
We love you.
And they taught meditation. Joel taught meditation at Yoga Story DTR and has done some tarot readings for me as well. And I followed Joel's journey on social media. We're social media friends, and noticed some changes. Just over the past year. And normally I don't like to comment on people's bodies. Like, I'm a personal trainer, nutrition coach, and I understand that there are times when people's bodies change from a place of stress or illness or other ways that aren't healthy. And I'll
Mm.
use myself for an example. When I went through my divorce, very stressed out, and also training for an Ironman at the same time because that's how I channeled my crazy. And got down to like 122 pounds. And
Mm.
people were commenting how good I looked. And I'm
Ugh,
like,
it's the worst.
thanks. I'm
Yeah.
literally in fight or flight 24/7.
Thanks, it's the trauma.
Yes, thanks. It's the trauma. I'm not eating.
Right.
And then I'm going out and doing 2-hour bike rides. That is not a good way to lose weight.
Yeah.
So I don't like to comment on people's bodies, but I noticed that you were doing a lot of dance workouts, and you were really starting to express yourself through fashion.
Mm.
And there was one social media post in particular where you were absolutely killing it with some choreography. I was like, I could never move that fast. With the caption of, it had been a mentally rough day for you, but you showed up to have fun and sweat.
Mm.
That was like the thing that stuck out. It wasn't like I'm here to punish myself, or I'm here to like it was the positivity. I'm here to have fun and I'm
Mm.
here to sweat. And I noticed you were showing a lot of skin, and I was like, "Ooh."
Yeah, yeah.
But that you like it, and I know that social media is not a true portrait of a person,
Right.
but you could just tell a difference in how you were moving and how you changed from a year ago. So I reached out, had a really very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Personally, so I've been doing a little series on my social media about discipline. And so I reached out to ask you, first of all, to compliment you because I could tell that you were doing it from a different place.
Mhm.
I've been talking about how to reframe discipline. So what does discipline mean to you, Joel?
Oh man, I gotta say, especially as a parent, that, well, as a parent and a victim of childhood abuse, the word discipline definitely has a negative connotation to me, just like my gut reaction is to like curl up, you know? And I think that's really a testament to how I use discipline for myself for a long time. It was a beating stick, you know? It was, if I don't, well, it was a beating stick, but it was also a tool. I want to give it, credit where credit is due. I was just using the tool the wrong way, right? Because I thought that it was armor. I thought that discipline was shame. And I thought if I shame myself before anybody else can, then I'm ahead of the game and I can beat them to it, right? And I also thought that without shame, which I equated with discipline, that I would stop improving, right? And to me, that sounded like a death sentence, where if I stay stagnant and I stay where I'm at with my current mental health and physical health, then I will die. And so I need this really aggressive tool to beat me along, so that I can move forward. But then as a parent, I started to think about what discipline meant in that context. And that was really challenging, because I've tried for most of my son's life, he's 13, by the way, now, to go the gentle parenting route. Um, but I didn't know how to even speak to myself gently. And so that was a whole journey in itself. And so I really had to start reframing what discipline meant in that context with my son, where I was like, oh, well, I would never speak to him the way that I speak to myself. And when I would catch myself speaking to him that way, I would have to bring that awareness in and figure out how to do it differently. And so I started reframing discipline as um, I almost don't even like to call it discipline anymore. I just kind of call it um, we just have conversations, or it's consequences, or um, yeah, I don't know. It just I think because of my history with the word, it was hard to use it and to do it in general, right? And
Yeah.
so I ended up going a little too far in the other direction, where there was zero discipline, accountability. That's the word I was looking for.
Okay. Yeah, I
Not
like it.
necessarily discipline, but accountability, right? And now I've gotten a better relationship with the word and I use it more. But, when I was going through that process of figuring it out for myself, I said, let's lean towards more accountability, And when my son would make a mistake, I would start with compassion and curiosity, because I feel like those are really the first two, like the biggest tools in your toolbox when it comes to discipline, is meeting yourself where you are and being curious and compassionate first, to say, okay, first of all, it's okay to be where you are. You're allowed to be here, where you are, exactly as you are. And then getting curious. If there is something that you want to change, why are we behaving this way in the first place? What is causing us to be where we are? What has led up to this point? Um, and then that is how you move forward with discipline, where first you want to make sure you're, like, especially in the context of parenthood, make sure you're disciplining like the right thing, right? Because if you're addressing one problem and there's actually another one underneath it, you're not getting to that, like, you're kind of wasting your time, maybe even setting yourself back further. So that's a very long-winded way of saying it's a complicated relationship for me.
Yeah, I understand. Well, because when I say discipline, and I presented this to one of my classes, like, what do you guys think of when I say the word discipline? And one like she laughed, she goes, getting spanked
Yeah,
by,
exactly. That's
by your parents or whatnot. And
yeah.
I said we all had a good chuckle about that. And I said, well, that's yes, that's the truth, because we all automatically think of it as something negative. We think
Yeah.
of discipline as something negative.
Hmm.
And when it does come from a place of shame or guilt, you move differently. And
Mm.
our queen, Brene Brown,
Yes.
Queen Brene has done lots of research on change, especially in inmates. I believe this was particular to people from prison or jail
Hmm.
when they were trying to implement positive change in their life, that the majority of them would fail if they are applying it from a place of shame or guilt.
Mhm.
but that they would succeed if they were coming out of it with a to it with a more positive mindset.
Mhm.
That the mindset of how you apply something, and a shocker, is correlated to the outcome.
Yeah.
So when we start to move from a place of discipline out of self-love as opposed to discipline from shame or guilt, that is kind of where the magic flip is, that magic
Yeah.
switch. But the big part of it is moving from those spaces. So
Yeah.
your perspective physically in your body, how did it feel when you were moving, if you were moving, and I mean like physically moving, because we were talking about health here in this aspect, from a place of shame or guilt?
Um, that's a really interesting question for me because most of the problem discipline wise for me didn't live in the movement. It was everything leading up to getting there, right? So in the moment, honestly, like I love going to the gym. I love jogging. Like I love moving my body. It feels good. I can feel the benefits. I love the sweating and then like getting to feel the wind in the sweat after. Like it's a whole thing. Like I love it, but it was getting myself to that point that the shame really prevented me from getting there. Like,
It was more of like a block.
yeah, yeah. And I will say that like even though I was feeling all the good things from the movement and I was getting the endorphins and all of that, there was still that underlying narrative of, but you're still not good enough.
Mm.
You're not allowed to quit. You need to do this forever because look at you. You know what I mean? And it was just this almost like Brene Brown calls it foreboding joy, where I wasn't even allowed to fully experience the moment and all the joy that comes with movement, this thing that I love, because I was so caught up in just the shame and the negative self-image and the narrative. Yeah.
I think a lot of people would relate to that because it seems like, and it seems counterintuitive when you think about it, but having this shame and guilt blocking you from doing the very thing that will help you out,
Mhm.
whether it's working out or eating right or going to therapy or whatever, but there's this block of shame and guilt that says you're not good enough for it.
Mhm.
Or what I often hear in my sessions, not necessarily in my sessions with personal training clients, but like when people who want to start exercising or who want to start working out with me, they always feel like they have to get to some arbitrary magical place
Yeah.
physically to be able to say, okay, now I can start
Yeah.
working out. And it's like, but you're going to be working out to get to that point. So why does there
Mhm.
have to be some sort of magical point or going to yoga or whatever it is? Well, I need to start walking in order for me to go to yoga. I need to start doing this or that. And it's that biggest blocker that just start.
Yeah.
It's such a block to people to feel worthy enough to just start.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's the biggest thing for people. And I tell them all, it's like the hardest part is starting. And it's
Mhm.
usually that first 3 weeks of just of starting and staying consistent to get to the point where it is a habit and it's something then that you can be like every day, I just do this and I show up for myself every single day to where it becomes so part of your life that you are like, I can't start my day without
Right.
it. And that may be another thing to talk about then at that
Yeah.
point. But that shame and guilt can be
Mhm.
such a big blocker for people.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people don't even realize that shame actively takes energy. Like shame burns calories. Not to say everybody go out and start the shame diet. That's the worst diet. But like it when when you are ruminating and you've got this inner narrative, like that's using physical brain power that is burning your calories, but it's
Yeah.
also draining your emotional energy. Like we have physical and emotional energy. And when you are spending all of your energy on shame, there's none left for doing. And so then you just get stuck in that cycle of shaming yourself because you're not doing anything, sapping all of your energy so you can't do anything. And then you just keep shaming yourself. And it's like at some point you have to say, that's enough. This is
Yeah.
not helpful. This is no longer a useful tool for me.
Yes, I y'all can't see me on the podcast, but Joel can. I threw my hands up and hallelujah, because I talk about this a lot with clients that you have a battery.
Mm,
Like think of your energy, your mental, emotional, physical energy as a battery bank.
yeah.
And things that you spend your time on emotionally drain your battery.
Hmm.
Things that you spend time on mentally drain your battery. And then things that you spend time on physically will drain your battery. And then we reload by spending time in rest. So, like actual physical sleep or rest to refill that physical part. And then we spend time either alone or with people who fill our cup, and that helps fill our emotional battery. And then we spend time journaling, going to therapy, doing the other things that help refill that mental battery. And so
Mm,
when you're constantly around either people that drain your battery
mm.
mentally and emotionally, then you don't have enough for physical exercise. And
Right.
I know that seems like to some might seem superficial, but physical exercise to me, and I know I preach this from a fitness professional. Like I get it. Like I know people are gonna be like, well, of course you're gonna say physical exercise is so good for you because you're a personal trainer, you're a yoga instructor, you own a yoga studio, you're financially motivated to say that. I'm like, no, it is an integral part of your mental and emotional capacity because it
Yeah.
is all, I mean, yoga, it's all connected.
I gotta say,
All,
I was real pissed off. Can I say pissed?
yeah,
When, because I am not a yoga and fitness guru, right? And so
right.
when I started therapy and also started seeing a psychiatrist, and they both, one of the first things they told me was that I needed to start exercising because, like, that was one of the best things I could do for my mental health. I was so mad. I was so pissed. I was like, yeah, whatever. You have to say that, you know. And but my thankfully my psychiatrist was willing to meet me where I was, and he said, "Listen, if it's literally 5 minutes, just go outside and you don't have to jog, you don't like literally just walk for
Yeah,
5 minutes
good for you.
once a day and tell me you don't feel better. If you don't feel better, we'll go with something else. But like let's start there." And that again also really helped me reconceptualize what it means to build a habit. I was like, "Oh, what do you mean I don't have to start by going to the gym for 2 hours, 3 days a week? Like, what do you mean I can just walk for 5 minutes and that's enough?" Like, because the not enoughness is huge with motivation and discipline, right? Where you're like, "Oh, well, if I can't do enough, then I'm not going to do anything." And it's like you get to define what enough is. You make the rules. As long as you're doing something, you're showing up. James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, if you literally drive to the gym, walk in and like walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes and leave, like you are building that habit. You can't improve upon a habit that doesn't exist yet. And
Yes.
so that really helped me reframe things in a big way. But yeah, I was really upset to find out that my stupid little mental health walks are actually helpful for my mental health.
Actually working.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that too. I have an older dog that it's his greatest joy is to come to the
Oh.
studio with me,
Oh.
much to my chagrin, because he's a part Pomeranian, part Chihuahua, and
Mm,
he's kind of yappy, but he absolutely loves greeting everybody in the studio. And then I take time out at least once a day to take him on a walk. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. That's all the time that I have. And sometimes it's 30 minutes, especially if I can get out in the summertime before it gets really, really hot. Then I can
yeah.
take him on a walk and it helps me so much. It helps him, yes, like he loves
Mm,
it. He gets to, greet other dogs and go out and exercise. But for me too mentally. And even though I'm a very active person, just to get like some non-exercise movement in that
Mhm.
does not have a goal, that does not have a purpose, that it is just
Ooh.
moving my body. I know that's it. So we can get into that
Yep,
too.
yep.
And I also have a degree in psychology. And so I worked in a clinical neuropsychologist's office and
I did not know that about you. Oh my God.
I love psychology and I worked in I think he's still practicing too. Dr. Back, shout out to Dick Back in Fayetteville, Arkansas, the Northwest Arkansas Psychological Group. I was his psych technician and office manager in 2002 to 2003 or four, like for a year and a half ish. And he was well ahead of his time because that was the early 2000s. There,
Mm,
people weren't really like into this whole wellness as a holistic approach.
mhm,
And the first thing he would prescribe to his anxiety and depressed clients, those two people that would come in with anxiety and depression, is change your diet, get more omega-3s in, cut
mhm.
out like processed foods. He would be like, you eat more whole wheat because that was
Yeah.
the thing back then was switching from like white bread to whole wheat or whatever.
Yeah.
Eat more salmon. I remember,
Mm.
an article he
Oh
had photo
no.
copy about eating more salmon because it had omega-3s in it. And
Gotta eat more
and
salmon. No.
exercise. Yeah, those were the three things that he was like, change your diet and exercise. Those were the main things that he would prescribe to people.
Mhm,
Uh, so just that, and then it's that shift, that mindset from guilt and shame. Once you kind of finally break through that with therapy, with whatever approach that you can take to get to that positive mental place of showing up even when you don't want to. Because that's the big thing too, I think, in our culture is that if you don't want to, you don't have to.
mm,
And so, but moving from a place of self-love to say, no, I need to do this because it's good for my mental health, even if I don't want to do it today.
mhm.
Um, so what does discipline feel like for you if you're moving from a place of self-love as opposed to shame and guilt?
Um, so much better. First of all, just like the level of energy that I can bring into movement, is so much higher when I'm not letting shame sap all my energy. But it also brought actual joy to the movement for me.
Mm,
But and I will say one of the biggest shifts that happened about a year ago was I stopped working out to lose weight. Because honestly, I had been like I wasn't inactive during that time a year ago when I was at the heaviest I've ever been. Um, it seemed like it didn't matter what I did. And just full transparency, like I actually had a little bit of an eating disorder at the time where I wasn't eating. And so I wasn't fueling my body. I was moving, but it was, not as often as I wanted to. And then when I did, it was um, not super joyful. And I think even more like physical pain. Because for me, I don't know if this is everybody, but for me, when I have a mental stressor going on, that will express itself physically a lot of the time.
yeah.
And so I was just in shame so often that it was like physically manifesting as pain. And so it made things uncomfortable when I was, in movement. And so when I shifted from saying, you know what, like you said, I'm not doing this um, necessarily because I want to, but it is good for me. And I need to do this just because I deserve to. My body deserves movement and it deserves to be cared for. And when I shifted from the shame narrative to, again, that compassionate curiosity, like that changed everything. And suddenly, I wasn't excited to get up at 6:30 a.m. to go for, my jog or go to the gym or do yoga, but I was joyfully doing it anyway. And, I use a lot of opposite action, which is I think it's a cognitive behavioral therapy tool where in the moment you say, I don't feel like doing this, and I'm going to do it anyway. And just having that be itself a practice was huge because then it wasn't something that I was like being forced to do or having to shame myself into. It was just, I have made a decision and I'm going to honor this commitment to myself.
I love that.
Um, yeah.
Well, my therapist and I use very similar tools in this is the person that I want to be.
Mm,
And so every time that I come across a choice to make, give myself the freedom to pause. First of all, I don't have to make a
mm,
decision quickly. I don't have to, rush through things, that I can pause and say, what choice is going to move me to this
mm,
higher self, to this self that I'm wanting to be, this self that I
mm,
say that I am. And that's another tool that I use is that I have a journal that I use I am statements
mm.
to say I am whatever it is I want to be or whatever it
Yeah.
is that I'm wanting to have in my life.
Hmm.
That like I use those I am statements as if it already is true.
Yep.
Because I think that's very powerful. So if somebody is struggling with that block of shame or guilt from either past narratives that trusted ones have told you, like parents or spouses, partners, and whatnot, or if it's been actions that you have done that then
Hmm.
you internalize and make it an identity.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we also need to learn is that past actions don't
Yep.
define present person, that you can make different actions to be different person.
Hmm.
So that you are then change, like you may have internalized a narrative from something that has not
Yeah.
even really been
Yeah.
something you made up in your mind, basically that is
Well,
that you think is true.
yeah.
that,
And
that
that's
now
the
you are
thing though.
acting out as true.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the thing though. Like everyone thinks that the narrative you already have is like the real one, right? And that anything else is just gaslighting yourself or being delusional. But like you made up that narrative too. You don't
Yeah,
realize it all the time, but like you can literally make up whatever narrative you want and then use it as a tool.
yes,
And
that's what I do.
yeah, and I love that you brought that up. It reminds me of a master class I did a long time ago on the be, do, have mindset, where as far as habit formation and like self-identity, everybody thinks you have to like start with what you want to have and say, okay, when I have these things, I can do the things I want to do, and then I can be the person I want to be. But that's
Hmm.
actually completely backwards to how the brain works. You
Yeah.
have to start with who do I want to be? What kind of actions would that kind of person take? And then when you take those actions, you will just naturally become that person and then you will have the things that you want to have.
Yes. I think that
So,
can
yeah.
be life-changing to so many people. And that
Hmm.
if you're struggling with, in particular, we're kind of talking about and addressing mental or physical health, is that you visualize who that person is, who that
Hmm.
future self is, and then you work backwards from that and say, I am that future person. What would this future person do? Well, I'm going to do those things.
Hmm.
And the thing that you can also work it the other way. So we were talking about this in the pre-show that I'm on vacation right now in Gulf Shores, and my companion and I will do a little work in the morning. I get a workout in, and then I go to the beach all day. And I've
Hmm.
given myself complete and utter freedom to be like, I don't have to pack my day full of adventures. This is normally what I
Hmm.
do when I travel, is that I pack it for like we're gonna go do B, C, like do all the things.
Yeah.
And I've given myself permission to A, be here without my children,
Hmm.
and B, to do absolutely nothing the rest of the
Yes.
day if that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And to just be like on the beach all day, reading a book all day, listening to music all day. I'll get up and go for my little walk down the beach. If I feel like moving, I move. If I don't, I don't.
Hmm.
And for me, that. big shift because I'm such a have to get my workout in, have to do all the things, have to keep everybody running, have to like check in on everybody. I tend to be the responsible one, I'm the owner, I'm the mom, I'm the whatever. And so this week has been all about being intentionally just being
Yeah.
as
Well,
opposed to doing.
rest is productive, and a lot of people
Yes.
don't think about that either. It really reminds me about like some of the narrative shifts I had to make with self-care, especially on my mental health journey. So many people see self-care as like, oh, let's have a spa day or take a bubble bath or get a massage. And like, yes, sometimes that is self-care, but you really have to look at a more holistic approach to self-care where like self-care means figuring out what kind of care you need in the moment.
Yes.
And sometimes self-care is doing the dishes that have piled up for a week. Sometimes it's getting out of bed at 6 a.m. when you're super tired because that's the only time of day you have to go for your mental health walk or go to the gym or whatever it is, you know? And like active self-care is something a lot of people sleep on, where like passive self-care is great, and like you just said, like there are times where like you do need to do that because self-care is the other side of the discipline coin. Like if you're not refueling, there's nothing in the tank when it's time to go.
Yes.
And so just like going to the gas station is productive, that is what you're doing when you rest and when you do prioritize that passive self-care, especially if you're hyperactive in every other area of your life. Um, so yeah, you got to give yourself that permission. And again, that's so much easier when you let go of the shame because that's what usually gets in the way of that
Yeah.
kind of self-care is the whole time you're trying to do it, you've got that shame narrative running of all the things you should be doing instead. And so being able to just let that narrative go and say, no, this is productive. This is what I'm intentionally doing right now. It's a huge game changer.
Yeah,
So,
and it's also a huge game changer when you start to eliminate what you can. Like my children are a big mental and emotional drain. I cannot
mm,
eliminate my children from
no.
my life. I
Yeah.
want them to be there,
Yeah.
however, but that looking at relationships that perhaps need to be adjusted.
Mm,
Boundaries is a big buzzword right now, and
mm-hmm,
people think of them as a wall, a fence.
mm.
Some people have electric fences, and some
Oof.
people have, I know, I've come up against those people,
Yeah.
electric fences, and some people have way too porous, um,
Mm,
you know, wire fences, like
mm-hmm,
electric fences versus fences where you just can like very easily slip through.
mm.
And they're not to keep other people out. Like
No.
they tend to think of it as I'm going to keep these people from hurting me. It's another way
Mm,
of control. Like this
mm-hmm,
boundary is to keep other people from hurting me.
mm-hmm.
And really what it is, it's from Dr. Drew. You remember Dr. Drew from MTV?
Oh yeah.
He defined it. And it was eye-opening. I was like, oh, that's what a boundary is. And I've read the boundary book, but a boundary is recognizing when someone else causes me pain or
Mm,
when something comes up that causes me pain. It's that pain is my responsibility. It's not their
yes.
responsibility. So understanding either specific circumstances or specific things that happen that cause you pain, then you are going to put a boundary up for you
Yes.
to not get like perhaps to not get involved in something because you know you take on pain or
Mhm.
you know that's going to cause you pain.
Right.
So for me, it's not trying to fix people.
Ooh.
Yeah. Because I'm kind of in that role, right? I'm a
Yeah.
physical health coach, a personal trainer, I'm a
Yeah.
nutrition coach, I'm a yoga teacher, but it is not my job to save you. I
Mm.
will present to you the tools that you
Yeah.
pay me to present to you.
Yeah.
So that's been one thing is like charge for those services.
Mhm.
that there is an agreement in place that these are the things that I'm going to do for you. These are the things that I will not do for you.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to present these to you as here's what I know to be tried and true, scientifically backed. These are some, things that I have researched that can help you along with this journey. Take them
Mhm.
or leave them. Do with them what you would like to do. You've paid me to present these to you to help you implement them in your life. And then if you do not, that is not my problem.
Right.
That is a
Yeah.
you problem now, not a me problem. And so many times I've presented it, oh, that's a me problem. That is a shortcoming of me. That is a failure of me. And it's like, no,
Mm.
that is no longer like I've put a boundary up that I'm not going to internalize and take that on as my pain
Mm.
because they did not implement the tools that I presented to them.
Right.
Or in personal relationships, they did not do the steps that they needed to do to stay with me as a partner or a friend or whatever role I play in their life. I am not going to internalize that pain because that is not a shortcoming of me.
Mm. Yep.
And then am I perfect? Absolutely not. There are things that I do not do correctly in my life or in my communication, but that's my boundary is that I'm not going to be saving people or fixing people. And I will only be in relationships with people who match my energy and where I'm at in my life,
Mhm.
because then we can grow from that place together.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
that's been like a big shift for me for self-love.
Mhm.
Um, I know this is kind of off topic, but
Well, it's
we're
funny because I feel like it ties back in too, because like a lot of the things that get in the way of healthy boundaries, healthy connection is that shame, that inner narrative of, whatever it is that you've got going on. If you can pause the shame long enough to kind of just fully accept yourself as a fully flawed human, a full flawed human, not like you're all flaws, but you kind of like pre-forgive yourself, right? So
Yeah.
that when it does happen, like you said, we're not perfect. We all are messy and human. And when those road bumps happen, if you've already chosen to accept that that's part of your reality, when it does happen, you're not overwhelmed with that shame that causes you to throw up those electric fences, right? You can actively engage with the moment and you can comes back to accountability. You can hold yourself accountable in those moments. And then you can also have, the regulated nervous system to be able to reach out to the other person and say, okay, here's what's mine, but like here is what's yours, basically, and
Yeah.
giving that back to them so that you're not internalizing everything.
And this
Uh,
is why all people need therapy.
yeah, yes, 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 yes.
Because a good therapist will give you the tools and help you recognize when you're doing that. But all that to
Yeah.
say, then when you start to come into that place of self-love
Hmm.
and being disciplined from a place of self-love and
Hmm.
showing up consistently because you love yourself, your actions and there then are matching
Hmm.
what you say you're wanting to do.
Yes.
That consistency shows you, yes, I really do love myself because I'm consistently showing up for myself as if someone who loved me would show up for me.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and
Um,
I think we talked a little bit about this in the texting conversation we had too. Um, as far as how you show up for yourself, I think a big thing for people to remember is that it's okay for what that looks like to change with you.
yeah,
And that was a big part of my discipline journey was there were all these things that I thought like, oh, I have to do it that like if I'm going to work out, I have to go to the gym. I like made these rules for myself, right? I have
it
to
has to
go
look a certain way.
has to
Yeah.
look a certain way. It has to be a certain kind of movement. Um and I finally just realized like I make all the rules for myself. Like we are the masters of our own universe. And if I can't consistently go to the gym, that's not a character flaw that I need to internalize and just, oh, just got to work harder, push harder, do better. Like, no, I was able to stop and be like, okay, maybe I don't love going to the gym. Like, what else is there? What else can I do?
Yes.
And letting that change. And so like I started with I was like, "Oh, I'm going to run. I miss running." And I started running and then like suddenly that was just not for whatever reason I couldn't build the consistency with that habit. And so instead of again shaming and punishing myself and all of these things, allowed myself to say, "Okay, Maybe running is not the thing anymore. Like, what else could it be? And just letting myself go through this iterative process of trying a thing, seeing, getting what I can out of it, but then being honest about, like, is this actually working for me? Is this
Yeah.
a habit I can maintain? And so that way you're making sure that the energy you are spending on discipline and habits and routines are going towards things that are going to like be the most efficient thing for you. Like, if you're spending a bunch of energy more than you should have or should have to maintain one habit, is there another habit that you could like spend less energy on and get a better output?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I 100% agree because I tell my clients all the time, like, your physical journey does not have to look like anybody else's.
No.
It does not have to look like mine. That's a bit more on the extreme side where
Yeah.
I do, swim, bike, run,
Yeah.
lift, yoga. Like, you do not have to look like that.
I
I just,
literally when I first started and I decided like I'm just going to like find ways to move my body in a way that feels good. I literally started with Beat Saber on the VR.
there you go.
And I said, you know what? I freaking love Beat Saber. Like that makes me so happy. And if I don't know why I thought that like, oh, that's not a real workout when I would do it for literally 2 hours straight because I love it so much. And I would be sweating. I would have
Yeah.
to take the headset off every 20 minutes to just towel my face. Like, how is that not a workout? And I realized
Right.
that like if that's what a workout looks like for me, that's okay.
Yeah.
And I love it, and like that was honestly what really started that physical health journey for me was just like, oh, I'm allowed to just do things I love. I don't have to do what everyone else is doing or
I
what it
don't have to
even
do something
looks
that
like.
feels like terrible. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
that. It doesn't have to feel bad. Oh my God. I
I
still
tell people
remember
all the time, now you do have to, like, if you have, say that you need to lose weight for health
health
purposes,
reasons. Yeah.
yeah, health reasons, there are things that are going to be more scientifically proven to get
Yeah.
you to that point than others. But
Right.
start with the things, yes, that make you feel good about moving your body. Then
Yeah.
you slowly progress in intensity. I tell people all the time, like, you don't, they'll say, oh, I can't even run a mile. Like, nobody starts out running doing a marathon.
No.
Nobody expects you to be able to go out and run a mile right now if you've never done it before, or
Right.
if it's been 20 years since you've ran. Nobody expects you to be able to go out and do that. That is a made up thing in your mind.
Yep.
And it's something that we do all the time is we just make up shit in our mind and we act like it's true. Well, if
Hmm.
then make something else up.
Yeah. That's the thing.
And
Like you can make up good shit. That's
yeah,
be
you can
delulu, be
literally
delusional,
just make all this up. So why not make up something that is positive, that
Right.
is loving, that is true, and that discipline is not this scary, awful, punishing thing,
Mm.
but instead it is a consistency and showing up for yourself because you love yourself, because that's what people do when you love someone,
Yep.
is you show up consistently for them. And so you're going to show up consistently for yourself because you love yourself. So your actions are going to meet your words, are going to
Yep.
match your words.
Yeah.
Oh, we again, we were saying too that we like wanted, we should do this, we could talk for hours about
Yeah.
this because we're
Forever.
so passionate about it. But we will go ahead and wrap it up there, and I will make sure to put all of Joel's info, link to their socials and how to contact them if you guys are interested in seeing their work or hiring them as a consultant, or tarot reading with them. All of
Yeah.
that highly recommended. And I want to thank you so much for being open and willing to discuss your journey with us here on Yoga Story Express. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. This was great.
Ah.